Back on the Young Turks. I am your host, Jake Huger. Jared Jackson producing, Jesus Godoy directing. The A-Team is here. Everyone's in the house. And soon, Sarah Palin's #1 defender, John Ziegler, will be in the house. He will step in to Rebel headquarters. And we'll see how that goes. That should be a fun interview. That's coming up in the next segment. All right, now, my favorite story of the day is what I'm going to lead off this hour with. The Tea Party patriots have decided that Christmas caroling should be mandatory in California. Now, this story is chock full of irony. I love it from the get-go. First of all, they've started an initiative for their California members called Freedom to Present Christmas Music in Public School Classrooms or Assemblies Initiative. It's a bit clunky, the name, but nonetheless, they move forward. Mary Hyatt is a substitute teacher. She's leading the charge. Local paper Reading Searchlight explains. The initiative would require schools to provide children the opportunity to listen or perform Christmas carols and would subject the schools to litigation if the rule isn't followed. So, you must be presented with the opportunity to perform or listen to the Christmas carols. Now, they say, because they are munificent and generous, that if you choose not to participate, you can sit there and listen. Okay, listen to the Christmas carol. Soak it in. It's about Jesus. Okay. Now, I thought they wanted the government out of your life. I thought they wanted less government rules. This seems to be a new government rule. And I thought they were against litigation. This is a mandatory litigation if you don't Christmas carol, God damn it. Okay, now there's further explanation. Schools currently, as the paper explains, currently are allowed to offer Christmas music as long as it is used for academic purposes rather than devotional purposes and isn't used to promote a particular religious belief, according to an analysis by California Legislative's Analyst's Office. Okay, so right now they can do the Christmas caroling anyway. They just say, hey, look, this isn't so we can convert you to Christianity, but for academic reasons, we're studying Christmas caroling. You know, whatever it might be, as long as there isn't a compulsory side to it and that the purpose isn't religious, it's, as they say, academic and people can opt out of it, et cetera, and not to promote a particular religious belief, right? So if you want to sing about Frosty the Snowman, it's already okay to do that, right? But that's not enough for the Tea Party guys. It's got to be compulsory, okay? You must sing the Christmas carols, and it must be to promote a religious belief. So, now look, again, they have little loopholes. They're fair. They say, you know, I guess if you're one of these Kwanzaa guys or something, sit in the corner. Enjoy the nice Christian Christmas. Now, and the carols that go along with it. But I love these guys because they have no attachment to the facts. Here comes Eric Ryan, president of the Reading Tea Party Patriots. He says, quote, bottom line is Christmas is about Christmas. Okay, so already you're starting off on a good note here. He says, that's why we have it. It's not about winter solstice or Kwanzaa. It's like, wow, you guys, it's called Christmas for a reason. Okay. Actually, Christmas is all about the winter solstice. Jesus was born nowhere near Christmas. Nowhere near December 25th. And biblical scholars will tell you that. Their best guess among biblical scholars is that he was born April 17th, actually in 6 BC. So that would be 6 years before Christ, in some ironic way, based on what's written in the Bible, etc., as best as they can piece it together, right? The reason we have Christmas around December 25th is because of the winter solstice. That's what people used to celebrate in the pagan traditions. And what Christianity wanted to do was smart, was to say, hey, you know, guys, we don't want to rain on your parade. It sounds like you guys are having a lot of fun in this winter solstice. Can we just call it Christmas and pretend Jesus was born around then? And they spit on it and they shook on it like it's a deal. But what's awesome is that all that history is lost on Eric Ryan. This ain't about no winter solstice. It's about Christmas, damn it. No, not really. Not even close. Saturnalia is what it was originally about, and that was a celebration of the winter solstice. You know, quick little fun side bit here, too. You know why we have the pine trees as part of Christmas? Because in the Germanic traditions, it was the tree that doesn't die. So it represented eternal life, and it was part of the winter solstice celebrations. So there's nothing Christian about the Christmas tree, and there's nothing Christian originally about celebrating this holiday around this time of year. It's to celebrate the rebirth of the sun. So their ignorance is eternal, and their hypocrisy and their irony and their lack of it is also eternal, like the pine tree. Okay, it doesn't shed its leaves; it always stays just right there. So yes, now if they get their way in California, you will Christmas carol, damn it. So now I love the Christmas carols, and I love Christmas overall, because it's not really about Christianity. It's a wonderful little thing created by, largely these days, American marketers. We all see Santa drinking a Coke, everybody gets presents, everybody's having fun. Okay, so bring it down a notch, and let's let all Americans enjoy this lovely, realistically secular holiday. By the way, I grew up in Turkey until I was 8, right? You know what we did around Christmas? Of course, we didn't celebrate Christmas. We celebrated New Year's. And funny enough, there was a New Year's tree. And around New Year's, a guy with a funny red suit and a big white beard would show up, and he was Noel. And Noel would bring you presents. Funny how that works. All kids all around the world love the presents, whatever excuse they need, whether it's Saturnalia, Christmas, or New Year's. All right. Now, more fun about the Tea Party guys. They're having an internal rumble. These guys are rich, man. This is awesome. Apparently, they've split up into 2 squads, the Tea Party Patriots and the Tea Party Express. They will be playing each other in the XFL Bowl. Okay? And they're suing one another. Come on, man. I love the irony. I love it. They're like, oh, this goddamn liberals, and lawsuits everywhere, tort litigation, I'll tell you. I'm going to sue you, Express mother. So what happened is apparently the captain of the Tea Party Patriots, I'm not kidding, the guy who was one of the original founders, switched over in a coup to the Tea Party Express. And when they lost their star quarterback, well, the Tea Party Patriots were incensed. And so they sued the Tea Party Express for taking their main guy. Hey, Tea Party guys, what do you need the government to? You need judges, activist judges, to straighten this out for you? What are you going to the government for, man? What's the matter with you? Why don't you settle it old school style, Taliban style, or whatever you want to call it, Tea Party style? Throw down some tea bags, go to work. I'm not encouraging anything, I'm just saying. All right, now, meanwhile, these guys are a real serious force these days. There's an article in the Washington Post about how they're coming. They're coming for the Republican Party, and they want to raise money, and they say they're going to use the Obama model of raising a small amount of money, but they're going to do it better than Obama. I know, that's what everybody says. Okay, and they're raising money for candidates all across the country. They want to take down Carly Fiorina, who's the establishment candidate for the Republicans in California. They consider her far too moderate. I consider her far too right-wing. But they say, no, they're going to run a really right-wing senatorial candidate in California and beat Barbara Boxer. Look, if you're a Democrat, you got to love these guys. I mean, the chance of a hard right-winger beating Barbara Boxer in California is less than 0%. Okay, so if they take down Fiorina, they've done you, if you're the Democratic Party, they've done you a tremendous service. I mean, it's like the Democratic Party should almost be funding the Tea Party guys. Okay, now in Florida, Charlie Crist is probably going to win in a cakewalk if he makes it out of the primary, but they're doing their damnedest to make sure he doesn't. They're going to run this guy, they are running this guy, Rubio, against Charlie Crist to make sure they lose in Florida. We already saw what happened in the 23rd District of New York, where they lost a seat that the Republican Party hadn't lost since 1872 because of these geniuses. And these guys keep bragging about it. That's in the article, too. They're like, oh, yeah, man, see how we lost in New York? We want to do that all over the country. Have at it, Hoss. And then once they all lose, and then they'll go and sue each other again. And then we'll get to the next XFL Bowl, and He Hate Me will take on the Express running back against the Patriots. All right, so now the guy who wants to encourage all this is Jim DeMint. He's a Republican senator from South Carolina, and he wants to stick his flag in the ground and say, I am the Tea Party clown of the world, and I want all the Tea Party guys to rally around me. And his main thing is the Republican Party is just simply too liberal and works with the Obama administration too much. I'm looking for the lunatics to jump out of the bushes here. Come, really? All right, well, we got clips. Let's go to clip number 17 where he says, I need new Republicans to be real right-wingers. Let's go.
Businessman who ran for Congress and limited my term. I never wanted to be a professional politician. I've spent 11 years up here. Next year will be my 12th. And when I was deciding whether to run again for another 6 years in the Senate,
and another 6
I
years.
decided if I'm going to be here, I am no longer going to go along with this idea that we're going to keep spending and borrowing and taking over and raising taxes, that I'm going to do everything I can to change things. And to do that, I need some new Republicans, people who believe in constitutional government, a balanced budget, and liberty. And so I'm out across the country recruiting new Republicans who I think, if they get here, will not only challenge the institutions of government, but be willing to even challenge the Republican Party and our leadership if they feel like we're going in the wrong direction. I think just a handful of new Republicans in the Senate could help change the direction, because America is angry. They're tired of what we're doing here in Washington. I think the Republican Party failed when we had the majority. We didn't know how good we were, though, until we saw how bad the Democrats are now that they're unrestrained. But I don't want to get the majority back and have the Americans put their trust in us again and us do the same thing we did before. We need to rebuild our party with the constitutional concepts, and we need to restore the faith of American people. We need some new Republicans to do that.
Yeah, this guy all of a sudden in favor of balanced budgets. Where were you for 8 years as Bush was destroying the budget, shredding the budget? Where were you? Oh, you were the professional politician that wasn't doing a damn thing about it, right, DeMint? All of a sudden, a Democrat gets into office, you're worried about balanced budgets. Oh, please, spare me. And then constitutional government. Really? Okay. Will one of them, for the love of God, tell me what Obama is doing that is unconstitutional, other than continuing some of the Bush policies? And where were you when Bush administration shredded the Fourth Amendment? Where were you? Hey, where were? Oh, yeah, that's right. You were up in Washington collecting your government paycheck. Oh, and oh, by the way, he's in favor of liberty. Oh, that's a new one. I didn't know that. That's, refreshing. Oh, I'm in favor of liberty. Maybe I'm in favor of DeMint. Okay, one more clip from DeMint. This one gets even better, because this is where he tells you the Republican Party is just simply too liberal. Let's watch.
To be a kingmaker, and really being part of elected leadership here in the Congress doesn't excite me that much, because it tends to be more of an administrative position. What we need to do is just restore the faith of the American people in our government. In this next election, they need to have some clear choices. When they say they'd rather have a Tea Party than a Republican, what they're telling us is they want some changes. And they want some people to stand up for principles. And in this case, they want us to show some passion and even some anger about what's going on. And I think there are many Republicans out there across the country who are willing to step into that role, and we just need to give them a shot. So the Senate Conservatives Fund, which is senateconservatives.com, by the way, if folks want to help, is just there to encourage those alternative candidates out there who are what I consider mainstream Americans. Because the problem here in the Republican Party is not that our base has gone to the right. The problem in the Republican Party is that the leadership has gone to the left. And the Tea Parties and the Republicans out across the country are right there where American principles have always been. And I'm trying to pull the party back to the mainstream of where America really is.
These people live on a different planet. They really do. But okay, look. Republican leadership is to the left. On what? They haven't given Obama a single vote on almost anything. 2 Republicans, well, 3 at the time with Specter, gave him a vote on the stimulus bill. But that's the leadership opposed them. They hated them. They wanted to run them out of their party, and they did. They ran Arlen Specter out of the party. How is the Republican leadership too far to the left? How much less than 0 votes can they give Obama? On health care right now, they're 0. How much further to the right could they be? And he says, no, they're not far right-wing enough. I hope they listen to DeMint. I really do. That cliff isn't that far off, Jim. Keep going. Okay. Now, meanwhile, Rush Limbaugh picks up that theme and says, Mitch McConnell, the Republican leadership, he was working with Obama too much. How many votes can they give him that is lower than the number 0? I don't understand it, right? So, no, Limbaugh says, no. The problem isn't just that they're all voting against health care in this case. It's that they aren't doing enough to delay and obstruct, etc. And the Republican leadership says, look, we're introducing as many amendments as we possibly can to delay the process and to make the bill better just in case it passes, because they have these huge numbers on the Democratic side, et cetera, but mainly to delay. And Limbaugh says, not good enough, Mitch. I need you to throw every, legislative trick you have, parliamentary tactic you have, throw a monkey wrench into that, and under no circumstances should it pass before Christmas. Rush has told you, and bow your head, Mitch. So apparently Republican leadership, far too liberal, according to Rush Limbaugh, and they're doing a terrible job in opposing Obama, and Jim DeMint agrees. And to give you a sense of, with the state of the Republican Party as we stand, public policy polling says 35% of Republicans now want to impeach Obama. When asked to give a reason as to why they want to impeach Obama, respondents did not have one. They don't like him. Now, remember when Bush broke all the FISA laws and the warrantless wiretapping and the illegal invasion? No, don't even think about it for a second. Not even in the 7th year, not in the 8th year, not when the Democrats are taking in charge. Obama's in charge. They're like, come on, let's impeach. Come on. 35% is a big number for all the Republicans across the country. Based on absolutely nothing, 35%. That same poll, by the way, asked their views on Sarah Palin. Well, some good news and some bad news for Sarah Palin. The good news is she has 41% of the country giving her a favorability rating. I'm shocked by that number. I think that number is crazy high. Now, it's nowhere near enough to win an election, but I'm so sad for the country that that number is that high. Now, the bad news for Sarah Palin, only one group of Americans have her at 50% approval. Everyone else, every other demographic, women have her at 37 to 51 against, African Americans 5% in favor, and you go down the list, the young, the middle-aged, etc., everybody's against her. The only place where she breaks even at 50% is people 65 and older. So older Americans, Sarah Palin, rock on. Now, the longer we go, of course, the less of them there will be. So, Sarah, you got to run quick. All right, now, speaking of Sarah Palin, we should come back with the #1 defender of Sarah Palin in the country here at Rebel Headquarters, Young Turks. Back on the Young Turks, and that music is because we're about to have a very fun guest for you guys. John Ziegler, who I'm describing as the #1 defender of Sarah Palin in the country, is in studio, as you can tell. John's been a longtime radio host, obviously conservative, and he's also got a movie out that's called Media Malpractice, How Obama Got Elected and Palin Was Targeted. And then he has described Palin's book, Going Rogue, as by far the best book and greatest literary achievement by a political figure in my lifetime. So those are interesting and strong words, John.
I'm guessing you don't agree.
Yeah, to say the least. Okay, we're going to get into that disagreement, of course, in just a minute. But first, other than the movie, what are you doing now, John? Are you still on the radio or no?
I was doing a radio show here in Los Angeles up until a few months ago when the station turned to all music. But I've been going across the country screening the film, Media Malpractice. We've done it in 20 different markets, still promoting it almost every single day, and still trying to change minds about the real Sarah Palin as opposed to the media caricature of her.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because obviously you and I tremendously disagree on that. You read my blog on what I call the irrefutable stupidity of Sarah Palin.
Right.
We're going to see if you can refute that.
I will look forward to that opportunity, believe me.
Okay, so now, John, when Sarah Palin was first introduced as the candidate, the vice presidential candidate, we did a show here, and I did about 10 minutes on her positives and 10 minutes on her negatives, okay?
Are you sure it was 10 and 10?
No, and we have it on YouTube, and you can check it out.
I'll trust you.
Okay, and I said, look, she's got great poll numbers in Alaska, okay?
Right.
And at that time, it was near 80%. So
right.
and she's young, and that's going to help appeal to some people. but yet she has some executive experience, et cetera. And I laid out the positives. And then what happened was, now I wasn't going to be on her side ideologically.
Sure.
Okay, so that's obvious, right? But I'm not on the side of Dick Cheney ideologically, but I don't think he's stupid. I think he's a really bright guy, very, very bright guy, and I respect him for what he's been able to accomplish. All right. So, but as I saw Sarah Palin in the interviews, I began to get a sense that this woman just was not up to the job, that she was in over her head. You did not get that sense. So walk me through that. You see her, you see the performance, and you think, bingo, this is the right person?
Well, to give you a little bit of background, I was at the Republican convention, and I was blown away by her convention speech, like everyone in that building was. And my first reaction was to go to some of the McCain campaign operatives that I knew and said, don't you dare let her do any taped interviews in the major liberal media, because they will use that to destroy her. Do not let her do anything that's not live, because live this woman will be spectacular. Taped, all bets are off, because you will essentially give the enemy the power to create the perception about her, and that's exactly what happened.
And John, when you say liberal media, you mean almost all the mainstream media. Like, because we
Everything-
view the mainstream media as far too conservative.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Well,
Okay.
that's an interesting world to live in. But I'm talking about the non-Fox News Channel, non-right-wing talk radio universe.
Okay.
Virtually everything other than that, with some small internet exceptions to that rule, is very liberal in my opinion.
And so, do you think the Gibson interview, the Kirk interview, et cetera, were they doctored, or why was it wrong?
Well,
the way
I
they
go
presented?
into great detail on both of those interviews in my film, Media Malpractice, which has an exclusive interview with Governor Palin from her home that made quite a bit of news earlier this year, where we talk extensively about both the Gibson interview and the Kirk interview. You, in your Huffington Post column, reference a bite in the Charlie Gibson interview that you thought was an indication that Sarah Palin must be stupid. It's the infamous Bush doctrine question. I find this fascinating, because I find this little episode to be like a Rorschach test. You look at it as if she must be stupid. I look at it as the question was, if anything was stupid in that interchange, it was the question.
All right,
and
great.
the way that it was asked.
And the reason I'm interrupting you there, John, is because we have the clip. So I want to play the clip for you guys and for you, John, and then let's come back and talk about it and talk about our different interpretations of it. So here's Sarah Palin with Charlie Gibson.
I know.
Do you agree with the Bush doctrine?
In what respect, Charlie?
The Bush. Well, what do you interpret it to be?
His worldview?
No, the Bush doctrine, enunciated September 2002, before the Iraq War.
I believe that what President Bush has attempted to do is rid this world of Islamic extremism, terrorists who are hell-bent on destroying our nation. There have been blunders along the way, though. There have been mistakes made. And with new leadership, and that's the beauty of American elections, of course, and democracy, is with new leadership comes opportunity to do things better.
The Bush doctrine, as I understand it, is that we have the right of anticipatory self-defense, that we have the right to a preemptive strike against any other country that we think is going to attack us. Do you agree with that?
Charlie, if there is legitimate and enough intelligence that tells us that a strike is imminent against American people, we have every right to defend our country.
Do we have the right to be making cross-border attacks into Pakistan from Afghanistan, with or without the approval of the Pakistani government?
As for our right to invade, we're going to work with these countries, building new relationships, working with existing allies, but forging new also, in order to, Charlie, get to a point in this world where war is not going to be a first option. In fact, war has got to be, and military strike, a last option.
But Governor, I'm asking, we have the right, in your mind, to go across the border with or without the approval of the Pakistani government?
In order to stop Islamic extremists, those terrorists who would seek to destroy America and our allies, we must do whatever it takes, and we must not blink, Charlie, in making those tough decisions of where we go and even who we target.
And let me finish with this. I got lost in a blizzard of words there. Is that a yes, that you think we have the right to go across the border, with or without the approval of the Pakistani government, to go after terrorists who are in the Waziristan area?
I believe that America has to exercise all options in order to stop the terrorists who are hell-bent on destroying America and our allies. We have got to have all options out there on the table.
All right. See, what I heard there, John, was first when he asked about the Bush Doctrine, she seemed not to know what he's referring to. Now,
well, wait a minute, hold on.
Okay.
That's what I meant by the Rorschach test.
Right.
Because you have a predisposition that she's an idiot. Anything that indicates that she's an idiot to you, you go, aha, she's an idiot. But as she said to me in my interview with her, after I played a clip from that very Charlie Gibson interview, she said to me, what the heck was wrong with that answer? He had not defined what the heck he meant by the Bush Doctrine, and many experts, including Charles Krauthammer, no one could ever say he's not an expert on this issue, agreed that there's no such thing as a Bush Doctrine, or certainly not one that is well enough defined to simply sit there, as Charlie Gibson did with his glasses over his nose, like that condescending professor, saying, well, what's the Bush Doctrine? It wasn't until later in that clip that he defined his terms, and she answered the question perfectly fine.
All right, John, I actually did not have a predisposition to think that she was an idiot before that interview. That was the first interview. Well, and I remember watching that clip going, wow, she doesn't know the Bush Doctrine. I knew the Bush Doctrine.
Wait a minute.
I thought everybody knew the Bush Doctrine, but you're saying you didn't know the Bush Doctrine? You're saying the Bush Doctrine might not even exist?
When she says to him, when she asks the question back, you mean his worldview? She's asking him to simply define what he's asking.
No.
That's all she's doing. What is wrong with that?
John, you didn't think Bush Doctrine was preemptive strikes? You didn't
That is the most, wait a minute, you make it sound as if Bush Doctrine was something that he talked about all the time, that this was well defined, this was well known. You could define the Bush Doctrine in 3 or 4 different ways. So if she had answered that question without asking for the clarification, she would have been an idiot. But she's not an idiot.
No, John, this is
she's
what I
an
would have
incredibly smart person, and if you spoke to her, you would probably know that. Or if you read her book, you would probably know that. Or if you saw my interview with her, you would probably know that.
See, I would have asked, hey, Bush Doctrine, you mean the preemptive strike policy, right? Or do you mean something else, Charlie? That would have been an exception. She seemed lost. All right, but let's move on to all the different parts because we've got a lot to get to. In there, when he asked, hey, would you do a cross-border raid or a drone strike in Pakistan, again, she seemed to be lost. She first mentioned invading Pakistan. No one had that on the map. You don't invade Pakistan. That's crazy talk. Why did she mention that?
Well, wait a minute. Hold on a second. There were the circumstances, and I don't remember verbatim what Charlie Gibson said there, but the circumstances that he was outlining were incredibly open-ended. I mean, he was creating the impression that there are dire circumstances. Do we have the right? Do we have the right? Not would you, but do we have the right to go into Pakistan? What is she supposed to say in those circumstances?
She's supposed to say, Charlie, it's a tough question because we want to work with the government of Pakistan. We don't want to alienate them, and there's nuclear weapons there, etc. But at the same time, we want to be able to have the right to go after bin Laden and Zawahiri in northern Pakistan. That's an intelligent answer.
That's essentially what she said.
Okay, again, it's amazing because we look at the same thing, and
that's what she said.
I don't think that's what she said. She said first she talked about invading Pakistan, then she gave an answer about we must not blink. I don't know what that means, and Charlie Gibson didn't know what that meant, and then finally she said all options are on the table, which I suppose means yes, we can do drone strikes, although she didn't say that. And maybe it means we can invade Pakistan because that's what she initially said.
By the way, where was the clip from Charlie Gibson being as much of a pit bull and trying to get a specific answer on an invasion of Pakistan with either Obama or Biden? I must have missed that particular episode. Because you know what? That didn't happen. And that's my biggest gripe here, is that I'm all for vigorous questioning of every politician, but there is no comparison, zero, when you look at the clips of a Charlie Gibson or Katie Couric or Brian Williams in how they treated Obama, the presidential candidate, versus how they treated Sarah Palin, the vice presidential candidate. It's not even close.
No, John, again, we must be seeing different things because Obama was asked and had very specific answers about Pakistan. It might not have been with Charlie Gibson, but it was in other interviews where he said, I would be more aggressive in doing drone strikes. And that became big news.
Show me the clip.
And in fact, they said, hey, wait a minute now, Obama's going further than Bush in saying what he would do in Pakistan.
I remember that controversy,
right.
but show me the clip where a news anchor went after him with follow-up after follow-up to try to define exactly what he meant there. Because I agree with you. I thought his answer on that was in what you might call stupid range. Kind of like when he said, I've been to 57 states, one more to go. That might be considered to be a stupid statement if you thought he was a dummy.
Why is drone strikes in Pakistan stupid? stupid. We just killed one of the top Al-Qaeda leaders today.
No, because the issue, and we're getting really deep in the woods here for a subject that was supposed to be a Sarah Palin stupid, which she's not. But the issue with Pakistan is, of course, that we have an ally. We have an ally with nuclear weapons there. That changes the equation with regard to what might destabilize that government and what the rules of engagement ought to be.
Okay, so you don't want to be as... Okay, I don't want to characterize what you just said. All right, so let's move on to the second clip. Because I think that for me, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. I saw this and I thought it was game over, but I'm curious about your reaction. So here's her answer about Hamas.
What happens if the goal of democracy, Governor Palin, doesn't produce the desired outcome? For example, in Gaza, the U.S. pushed hard for elections and Hamas won.
Yeah, well, especially in that region, though, we have got to protect those and support those who do seek democracy and do seek protections for the people who live there. And, you know, we're seeing today, in the last couple of days here in New York, a speaker, a president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, who would come on our soil and express such disdain for one of our closest allies and friends, Israel. And we're hearing the evil that he speaks, and if hearing him doesn't allow Americans to commit more solidly to protecting the friends and allies that we need, especially there in the Mideast, then nothing will. If Americans are not waking up to understand what it is that he represents, then nothing is going to wake us up, and we will be lulled into some kind of false sense of security that perhaps Americans were a part of before 9/11.
Now, Katie Couric, in my estimation there, asked a great question. And the question was, look, Hamas won the elections, but on the other hand, we're against Hamas. So that's an interesting thing to grapple with. She didn't seem to mention the Gaza Strip, Israel. She didn't give any indication that she had any idea who Hamas was. And she said, in fact, if you take her words literally, she said, we must protect those who seek democracy. So is she saying we should have protected Hamas?
Well, first of all, for the record, in that answer, she does mention Israel. It's a little bit later on in the clip there. But I will agree with you, and I agree with your reading of this in your Huffington Post piece, that she does not answer the question. I'll agree. Sarah Palin does not answer that question. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean she's an idiot or is she stupid? No. There are a lot of reasons why she wouldn't answer that question, one of which, by the way, happens to be the culture of that particular interview with Katie Couric. And as I define and outline and document in my film, Media Malpractice, and as she does in her book, that Katie Couric interview had gone way sideways long before that moment. And Sarah Palin knew that she was in a situation where there were trapdoors everywhere and that there was almost nothing good that was going to come of taking any chances whatsoever. So she was uncertain as to what she should say. She dodged the question. And I understand why she did it based upon the way Katie Couric was conducting those series of interviews.
See, again, you're looking at it as she dodged the question. I looked at it as she didn't have a prayer and how to answer. And I'll tell you why.
What are you basing that?
Because she goes on a tangent on Ahmadinejad, right? She doesn't connect it to, hey, Ahmadinejad's government might be funding Hamas. So she doesn't do any of that. She just doesn't talk about Israel, doesn't talk about the Gaza Strip, doesn't talk about Hamas. It seems to the average viewer, John, that she's lost in the woods.
Well,
she's like, Ahmadinejad is evil. That's what she said. Ahmadinejad is evil.
Right.
Well, what does that have to do with, wait a minute now, Hamas won the elections.
Right.
And don't you want a candidate who answers that question? Because it's a good question.
Oh, and I would have liked to have seen what would have happened when Obama was asked that question, but he was never asked that direct question during the campaign because it's a tough question. It's very difficult when you have a situation where we're supposed to be pro-democracy and democracy turns out that the terrorists often win, like what happened with that particular election. So I would like to see any candidate answer that question. She didn't answer it, again, because of the culture of the interview. Again, she did mention Israel, but I think it's interesting that you presume that because she doesn't answer a question, it must be, she's an idiot or she's stupid. Without that, to me, is a circular argument. You're presuming she's stupid, and then everything that might indicate that she could theoretically be stupid, you automatically say that that's the explanation.
Even if I think you're right, which I don't for a second. Okay.
Really?
Even if I thought, hey, you know what? She's just trying to dodge the question, right? Well, there is a million better ways to dodge the question. At least leave the audience with a sense that you understand who Hamas is, that you understand what the Gaza Strip is, or that you understand what the problem is. If you frame it that way, you have to understand that people are going to think you didn't know what the hell you were talking about, and hence you're underqualified, you're stupid, etc.
You don't think that if I did the same thing with every single clip of an interview that Barack Obama gave under much kinder, gentler circumstances, by the way, because no one went after him the way they went after Sarah Palin, you don't think that I could find numerous clips where Barack Obama dodges a question and indicate...
No, but that's exactly what I'm talking about, John. When we did the clips when Obama dodges questions. Right. It was in the primaries, it was in the general election. But you point out how he artfully dodged the question, letting you know that at least I know what the issue is, but I don't want to answer it. Whereas with her, I mean,
I don't think anyone's arguing that Barack Obama is a better technical speaker than Sarah Palin.
Okay.
No one is
at
arguing
least we have
that.
agreement on that.
No
We've
one
reached an agreement on that.
No one is arguing that, especially when he has his teleprompter. Without the teleprompter, it might be a different story.
I don't even want to get in that. But John, listen, can you see how the rest of us look at it and go, she didn't know? It appears she doesn't know a single Supreme Court decision. It appears she doesn't know what Gaza and Hamas is. Can you see how that impression is left?
I understand it, and it's largely because of the perception that was created by a Katie Couric interview where the evidence is overwhelming. Katie Couric had it out for her.
But why do you say that? Those are perfectly good questions, and you said it was a perfectly good question.
It's a perfectly good question. I'm giving you the reason why she dodged the question, and I'm giving you, I have numerous examples in my film where the Katie Couric interview was edited in a way that clearly was intended to make her look, in your words, stupid. There's so many examples of that we probably don't have enough time for it, but you mentioned a couple of others in your statement there. And again, I go back to this. There's two things you need to understand. The culture that she was in, knowing the famous or infamous "what do you read" question. This is the ultimate Rorschach test. You presume, I'm sure, that she didn't know what she reads because she doesn't read or because she was too panicked to know what the heck she
John,
reads.
I'll tell you exactly what I said right after that. It's on YouTube, so you can check it.
Right.
I said, look, I assume she reads something. Why won't she answer the question? It makes her look dumb. On that one, I gave her a bit of a pass because I said, look, she's got to read something, right? And I don't know why she's stonewalling. But on the other ones, if you get asked the Supreme Court question, what other cases, and you can't give a single case,
by the way,
you have to at least be smart enough to understand that makes you look stupid.
I agree with. It's funny that you mentioned the Supreme Court question because of all the alleged Sarah Palin foibles during the campaign, that's the only one that bothered me because I've researched every single one of them and there's no good explanation for that. She simply did not come up with a good answer to an important question. What Supreme Court decisions other than Roe v. Wade do you disagree with? She didn't come up with one. Again, I would suggest that there are a couple things going on there, one of which was that Sarah Palin knew that Katie Couric was out to get her at that point and that all bets are off. And she told me, Sarah Palin did, that she did not handle the situation well and that she essentially shut down because of it. That does not in any way, shape, or form get her completely off the hook, but it does not mean she's an idiot. This is a smart woman.
John, we got to go to the last clip. And John Ziegler is the guy who created the film Media Malpractice, How Obama Got Elected and Palin Was Targeted. There's this long Palin interviews in that movie. And you say you think Couric was an ambush. I think those were perfectly good questions she should have answered. But let's go to a different source, Bill O'Reilly, who was obviously not going to ambush her. He asked her what is a very easy question. Let's go to that clip and get your reaction to that.
One more question about President Obama. A lot of people are very nervous about him now. He's not having a good time in the White House now. You pointed out his lack of experience. You don't have that much experience. You walked away from the governorship after, what, 2 years, 2.5 years?
Going into my lame duck session, my fourth legislative session, that deciding I wasn't going to run again and not wanting to put Alaskans through a lame duck session that was
okay, but is it fair to for you to criticize Obama's lack of experience when somebody could make the same criticism about you on the national stage?
If you're talking about executive experience, I would put my experience up against his any day of the week. I'd been elected to local office since 1992 and was a city manager, strong mayor form of government, was the chief executive of the state, was an oil and gas regulator. There was some good experience there that could have been put to use in a vice presidential ticket. We have to remember, too, that I wasn't running for president.
No, but that's the key question, because John McCain is up there in years. You had to be qualified to take that office over.
Right, but I'm saying I was running for vice president, just like Joe Biden in running for vice president, I've never once heard you or anybody else question Joe Biden and his experience.
He's got a lot of experience. Let me be very bold and fresh again. Do you believe that you are smart enough, incisive enough, intellectual enough to handle the most powerful job in the world?
I believe that I am, because I have common sense, and I believe, the values that are reflective of so many other American values. And I believe that what Americans are seeking is not the elitism, the kind of a spinelessness that perhaps is made up for that with some kind of elite Ivy League education and a fat resume that's based on anything but hard work and private sector free enterprise principles. Americans could be seeking something like that in positive change in their leadership. I'm not saying that has to be me.
John, when I think a lot of people watch that, they see Miss Teen South Carolina. I mean, values reflective of other values.
Please.
Are you smart enough? She goes into spinelessness, made up for that, and then she goes to free enterprise principles. So make sense of it for me.
Well, first of all, I would say that it was not her best answer. And part of the challenge that she has there is that people like you have created this perception that she's not very bright. So then she gets asked the question,
how did the perception come? It came from answers like that.
No, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. We got to be careful not to have this situation where you have this circular argument. She's stupid because we think she's stupid, and therefore because we think she's stupid, she says things that we interpret to be stupid. Here's the deal. She mentions Joe Biden's experience, right? Mm-hmm. That sounds like an incredibly dumb thing to say because he's been in Washington all his life. She meant executive experience. Joe Biden has 0 executive experience, so she left out a word. You presume that to mean she's an idiot because she's trying to say something about Joe Biden that makes no sense. She just left out a word. In her mind, experience for president means executive experience, which she had more of than Joe Biden, more of than Barack Obama when he was elected. So that's an important distinction to make here. And by the way, it was Joe Biden who said during the campaign that when the stock market crashed, FDR went on television and calmed the country down. Now that was a stupid statement, and one of many that Joe Biden has made. Sarah Palin never said anything like that. So the real idiot in all of this is probably Joe Biden, and Barack Obama made other statements that could have been perceived.
But I asked you about the latter end of it.
Right.
I mean, look, Ian, you saw our clip on it. I didn't even talk about the Biden thing. I mean, I mentioned it in passing, but it's not that big a deal.
All right, let me connect the spinelessness thing.
Yeah.
So this is where a liberal like yourself would not be able to see it through the same prism as someone like myself. She inartfully was trying to talk about Ivy League elitism, and that in her mind, in the minds of a lot of conservatism, synonymous with Ivy League elitism is this notion that the global test, that America needs to bow down to Europe, that in a sense is a spinelessness when it comes to foreign policy, that America is bad, the rest of the world is good. That is, in our minds as a conservative, that's how we see Ivy League education, elitism, what have you. That's the connection.
Finally, John, because I'm trying to get your mindset here, that inartfulness comes across to us as she doesn't know how to speak and she's not bright. Okay,
well,
can you see that? Can you see that?
If you want to believe that, then the media has certainly given you plenty of opportunity.
But it's not the media; it's Bill O'Reilly. He lets her speak, and she bungles it. She can't do it.
That was not her best answer. How many answers has she given over the last year and a half?
Dozens that are just as bad.
Her? Oh, please!
I mean, look at her YouTube channel.
Wait, here's the bottom line on Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin is an incredibly intelligent, engaging, funny, I believe, sharp as a knife person that if you spent 5 minutes with her, you would change your mind. You would never have written that Huffington Post column saying that she's stupid. This is an incredibly smart woman, and it's not just common sense. I urge you, I'm going to give you my DVD with the entire uncut Sarah Palin interview on it. I sat her down for 45 minutes, showed her clips of things in the campaign she had never seen before. We never stopped tape once. She never missed a beat. She was engaging, smart, funny, on target. You have completely underestimated her, and a lot of people have underestimated her. Well, and it's to your own detriment, because this is a woman who once had 80% approval ratings in Alaska because Democrats there loved her.
Because she gave away the oil money, which was kind kind of
No,
socialist.
because she
but-
attacks corruption and Republicans.
All right. John Ziegler, the movie is Media Malpractice, How Obama Got Elected and Palin Was Targeted. Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it.
Website howobamagotelected.com. I'm sure your viewers and listeners will be thrilled to go there.
All right. Young Turks, come right back.
The Great American Broadcast.
Back on the Young Turks. That interview, of course, went a little long, so we have limited time to give you these last two stories, but I thought it was worth it. One, Obama went to accept his Nobel Peace Prize, ironically, of course, after he escalated the Afghanistan war, and he made basically a case for why war is necessary sometimes. I thought it was a peace prize. Now, I didn't dislike the speech. I think in normal times it was probably a pretty good speech and probably agree with a great chunk of it. But of course, there was some tremendous irony in him now receiving the prize right after he ordered the escalation of the Afghanistan war. And part of the speech was, of course, to try to justify that. So, but that's not the test of Obama. The test will be what he has done at the end of his term. So this is the beginning, and I believe, you got to give him a little bit of a chance on the foreign policy stuff, even though in this case I don't agree with him. But on the upside, one of the top al-Qaeda leaders, they're saying again, for the 18th time, the number 3 guy in al-Qaeda has been killed by a drone strike in Pakistan. There was an MSNBC analyst or an NBC analyst that explained it's always the number 3 guy because we're going after the operational head, what he called the COO, Chief Operating Officer of al-Qaeda, and we got another one now. He said this is apparently the first kill within the top leadership of al-Qaeda within the last year. So that seems to be good news. Now, we've got to save a lot of the other news that was from today to tomorrow, including France has also stepped up to the plate and got along with Britain. They will be doing a 50% surtax on bonuses of the bankers. And so when they tell you it's not possible here, don't believe the hype. It's possible in Britain, it's possible in France, and it's certainly possible in the United States of America if we had the political will for it. Young Turks.